From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Danda.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, being an effective product thinker still requires that human touch. Join me in a mission to champion human skills to help product teams boost creativity, enhance collaboration, and communicate with clarity. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable. Dear friend, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Superpower School podcast. I'm your host, Paddy Danda, and today I have a guest who's going to talk about probably my most favorite topic of all. We're going to talk about creativity, and he is a creativity explorer. I just love that title, and he's probably got the best office I've ever seen. And so if you're watching this on video, hopefully we'll have a sneak peek of that. I want to introduce you to Fredrik Haren, who's my guest today. Hey, Fredrik, how are you doing?
Hello, how are you? I'm doing great, thank you.
Fredrik, you've got to show us your office. Tell us about it.
Well, it is, I live on a private island outside Stockholm, and on top of my house, I built a geometric dome. So this is actually plastic, and it's 360 degrees like that. So I have sea view anywhere I look. And it's like sitting outside, but you're protected from the wind. So it's close to water. It's a wonderful place to sit.
I can see already, I would want to be sat there every day of my life and work. That is super cool. And you say it's on top of your house?
Yes. So the roof of my house where I live is flat. So that's how I built the dome on top of it. And the reason is that, so when I'm here, I'm disconnected from my family. It's like I go to work, I go up the stairs, and they don't come up here. Hopefully not. And then when I'm done, I just go down 15 flight of stairs, and then I'm on the island with my family. So that's the whole idea, to go to work, but still, separate work from life, even though you're working from home.
Amazing. That is super cool. And so that's quite a creative office. So tell us, what superpower you'd like to bring to this episode?
The superpower is creativity.
And can you define that for us? Because I think this word gets branded around a lot. Like, what do we mean? Is it like being really artistic? Is it something else? Tell us.
Yes. Well, it's a good question. I get it a lot. I try not to put one definition on creativity because it's kind of like a kaleidoscope. I like to think of creativity as many different things. And my job as the creativity explorer is to interview creative people. So I usually ask them the question too. And I was in Riga last week, and I interviewed a painter, and she said that to her, creativity she compared it to an antenna. She said it's receiving the mystery, which I think was very beautiful. So creativity is receiving the mystery, which what she meant was, don't try to think. Don't try to I'm going to think about an idea. But the ideas are out there floating around. And what you need to be the antenna that picks up that idea. So don't think. Her first rule was, do not think, feel, which I think it's another good advice. But that's just because that's the last person I interviewed. So if I interview someone else, it will be a different definition. So I try to have an open mind on creativity. But creativity is a process. It's a process of making ideas happen. And if you ask me, just recently I wrote down in my diary, I said, what is creativity? It's what makes us human. I think that's my definition at the moment. Because we are by far the most creative animal, and I think that's what defines who we are. I think we should be called Homo creatus, or whatever it will be in Latin.
And you termed yourself the creativity explorer. Tell me more about that. That's such a cool title.
Well, I did not term myself. My son, coined it. When he was 8 years old, he was asked to do a presentation in school. What does your parents do for a living? And he was supposed to say, my father's a creativity expert, because I've been studying creativity for 25 years. But he screws it up. And instead of saying my father's a creativity expert, he says my father's a creativity explorer. And I heard that, and I said, my wife was in the school at the time, so she heard it. She told me, And I said, this is so much better because an expert knows everything. It's expert but boring. An explorer, per definition, doesn't know anything but wants to know. And experts give answers, an explorer has questions. And the definition of explorer is to venture into unknown territory in order to learn more about it. So you do not know, but you want to know more. And so last 5 years, I've been redefining myself as a creativity explorer. Every time I interview someone, I start from scratch. I say, I don't know anything. Let's see what this person can teach me about creativity. And it's such a I changed my whole approach to the topic, but also how I approach life. And I think everyone should be an explorer.
I just love that metaphor. That's so cool. Yeah, totally agree. Well, I hope your son receives some royalties off the back of the great work you're doing.
You're giving me an idea now. I was recently in Bhutan, like a couple of weeks ago, and I interviewed one of the, well, he's a former minister in Bhutan. And he also had a good definition. He said, you Westerners, you look at creativity as some kind of a self-expression, like you have an idea and you want to get it out to the world, you want to express yourself. And he said, creativity is not about expression. It's about, it's an inward journey. He said, creativity is about understanding yourself. And I think that was very, very profound. Because if you think of any really good idea that you've had, it has taught you something about yourself. And he said that should be your main focus. Your creativity should be about you understanding yourself on a deeper level, which I think is very different from the other definitions. But yeah, so there you go. Two people I recently interviewed gave me a very different definition.
Oh, amazing. And they are very different definitions for sure. So,
yes,
creativity, I guess you said you've been studying this for the last 25 years. I'd love to hear like some of the things that have shaped your thinking, some of the surprises that you've discovered along the way about creativity.
Well, the one thing that has shaped me the most is that from 2000 to 2005, I was based in Sweden and I studied creativity in Sweden. But in 2005, I moved to China. And in 2008, I moved to Singapore. And when I moved to Singapore, I said, I'm not going to study creativity just in the country where I live. I'm going to study it on the global level. And that's when so now I've been to 75 different countries to interview creative people.
Wow.
And thousands of them. 75 countries in person, but then of course a lot also on Zoom and Skype or whatever, interviewing people. So it's more than 75 countries. And I interview all kinds of people. That's the second thing. So all kinds of countries, but also not just heads of CEOs and heads of innovation. Or I do that too, or artists. I do that too, like that painter. But I can interview anyone, like a taxi driver or a chef or a tourist guide in Oman. What can we learn about creativity from a tourist guide in Oman? So I tried to interview. I wrote that also recently. I study creativity to understand humanity, and I study humanity to understand creativity. That was kind of like when I started to define what do I do. I said that's what I do, because when you do that, you get not just one country, but all countries, all cultures, all kinds of professions. You get a deeper understanding of a topic. So that's kind of my niche.
And what are some of the differences you've noticed across different cultures? I'd love to know what the tourist guide in Oman told you.
Yeah, I was afraid you were going to ask me because I have done that one, but that was so long ago, I don't remember what he taught me. So I guess it wasn't that important. But I still remember the trip. It was amazing. I've never felt more. I never experienced silence on such, because I was the only person in the camp. There was low seasons. I was the only person there. I was extremely quiet, and it was a very interesting place to be with your thoughts when there's no other sound, because there's no sound in the desert, or very little. Well, there's so many different insights. Like one insight, which I call it I don't know what I call it. I don't have a name for it. Let's call it the human creativity paradox. Is that the more you go around the world, the more you realize that creativity is so many different things, that there is no one creativity. That like the creativity of an engineer at I don't know, is very different from the creativity of, I don't know, a painter in Thailand. So there's 8 billion plus different versions of creativity. On the other hand, we are so similar. We as human, the more you travel, the more you realize this. And in the trip in Bhutan, I went to a design studio, and then a couple of years ago, I was in a design studio in Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia. And I used to run a design studio, so I've been to many here in the West. And the funny thing, they look exactly the same. Like they dress the same. They have a pool table, in the cafeteria where they work. They have little Star Wars figures next to their computer. Like a web designer is a web designer no matter where you go. And they have more in common between them than they have with their neighbor. You go, leave that office and you go into the streets of in Bhutan, and suddenly it's like you're in a different planet. So we, as creatives, we are much more similar in our chosen profession than we are even as a nationalities or race or religion or anything like that, which I think is an interesting insight.
Yeah, it's like the thing that unites us in some way. I love that.
Like a podcaster is a podcaster anyway.
Yeah, you can imagine two podcasters meeting and just like yapping for hours and
Exactly.
hours.
Yes, and that's an interesting insight around it. But then also that when you realize that, you also realize that underneath all that culture and nationality and everything, we are very similar based on our interests, and you go even deeper and you realize we are very similar. I was in North Korea. I interviewed some people about creativity in North Korea, and I asked the guide. I said, "I'm only here for 10 days. Teach me something I won't learn about North Korea in just 10 days." And he said, they are just like us. That's the main insight. They are just like us. 80% just want a good life for themselves, their family, and their neighbors and everyone else. And 20% are assholes. They said the only difference is that in some countries, the assholes are in charge. That's very true, unfortunately.
Fredrik, in terms of somebody sat at home thinking, well, I do a job in tech and I don't feel I'm very creative at all. How can we boost creativity? Are there some simple techniques, tools, frameworks that you would recommend?
There are tools and there are frameworks, but I don't recommend necessarily tools or frameworks. I like to tell a story about my father. My father was a music teacher, but he was also a musician. He would play 10 different instruments. And parents would come up to him and say, how do I turn my son into a musician? And he said, well, you can teach any child to play an instrument. There's techniques and this is how you hold a flute or whatever. But he said the only way to make someone a musician is through inspiration. Expose them to really good music and tell them why it's good music, and play the greatest, Michael Jackson, for Frank Sinatra or whatever. And if they have the potential to become musicians, they will soak it up as a sponge and they will become musicians. And this is true for music, but it's true for any art. Actually, it's true for any kind of creativity. So creativity is not taught through processes and techniques. It's taught through inspiration. And any creative person you interview, you will know that they're looking for that inspiration. But then you also have to understand inspiration is not enough. Inspiration means to breathe in. Like that's the definition of breathing in. But creativity is to breathe out, is to, create something. So you can't just go for, you die if you always breathe in. So some people, they are like hooked on breathing in. They're hooked on inspiration. They go on all the conferences, they go to websites, they listen to podcasts all the time. They do all, we should do that, but we shouldn't do it all the time. So in my case, I get very inspired by traveling around the world, and I go to 15 to 35 countries per year, I interview hundreds of creative people, but I don't do it 365 days a year because I do that for, like I said, 15, 35 countries per year. But then I sit on this island, and on this island, I'm literally isolated from the rest of the world, and I just sit here and I reflect, because I need to balance what the inspiration that I got. And this is the room. This room is where I sit and write my books, for example, where I actually create something. If I only sat on this island and never met another person, I don't think I would be writing very good books about creativity. At least not global human creativity, which is my topic.
So environment, what part does that play? Because I was checking out some research recently about the fact that when you're working remotely, for example, versus in person, a big factor in terms of your creativity is your surroundings, and the fact that we're constantly, when we're in person, we're able to look around, we're making connections with different things in the environment. Whereas sometimes when you're on a Zoom call, our vision is very tunnel vision. Like we rarely look away from the screen and connect with the things around us. Obviously, in your case, is different. Like having a dome like that is just awesome. I don't think I would look at the screen if I was sat in there right now. So how important do you think that is for people to really connect with their surroundings?
Well, it's a bit more complicated because the creative process of people is different. So, for example, I'm an extreme introvert. So I worked in an office a few times in my life, and I hated every second of it. It doesn't suit me at all. As my job is to be a speaker. An introvert. I can be on the stage in front of 5,000 people, and I'm okay with that. But I don't like to go to an office and have this, small group of people and gossip and politics and all of that crap. I don't like that. That's why I live on an island. So for me, this is for me the perfect creative environment. Meet a lot of people around the world, half of the time, and the other half of the time sit by yourself on an island. But that only works for me. It doesn't maybe work for you. It doesn't matter. So some people like deadlines. Some people are super creative when there are deadlines. Some people hate deadlines and they freeze and they become totally uncreative. Some people need colleagues. Some people need to brainstorm. Some people hate brainstorm. So I don't want to give an answer on, yes, is creative environment important? Yes, it is. What kind of creative environment? Well, that's up to you to define. And I'm not going to say, so the Google creative offices, yeah, sure, that works for the people who like to work for Google, but it doesn't work for a lot of other people. There's a book I read, because I'm an author, I read a book. There's a book called, I don't know the name, they interviewed 100 authors, successful authors, about how they write a book. And everyone writes it differently. Someone writes 15 pages a day and doesn't stop until he's reached 15 pages. Someone writes, I know a Swedish author writes 15 minutes a day on his lunch break, but he writes every single day. What's the right way to write a book? There is no right way to write a book. What's the right way for you to write a book? What is your creative process? And then stick to that. And most people haven't done that. Most people haven't thought about deeply analyzing their creative process. And now we have this huge new thing called AI. So if you just press play and then you just brain dump, tell the AI about what's the best idea you ever had, what's the worst idea you ever had, what kills your creativity. Just tell it as much as you can about your creative process, and then ask it to summarize it for you and describe what your creative process is like and what you should do and shouldn't do. That is a great way of better understanding your own creative process, and then build a life around that. In my case, buy an island and buy a lot of airline tickets. But for a lot of people, that will kill their creativity. Like, oh, I get jet lag. I can't. How can you be creative? Don't you get? I can't think when I'm on a plane. Well, I do. I think very well on a plane. So there you go.
Oh, that's so fascinating. And I'd love for ChatGPT to tell me to buy an island, and I'd take that straight to my wife, and I could get her to go.
Sure. We have a lot of islands in Sweden. You're welcome to come here.
Brilliant. So if I'm a leader and I've got teams under me and I want to really create this culture of creativity, because, as you mentioned, in the future, I think, creativity is such a key skill for many of us, especially when AI is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of bringing ideas to life. So it's that kind of thought process behind the ideas. How do I create that culture of innovation and creativity?
There are many answers to that, but I'll give you one answer. I just interviewed recently a guy who used to work for Samsung in Korea, and he was an advertiser. And he was from England. When he came to South Korea, there was no creativity in the group. Like, they didn't understand each other until he realized that their creative processes are very different. So we just now talked about your individual creative process, but people also have a creative process for how they work in groups. And when you put in the way we work today, we very often are put together. We are put together to work in a group for a short period of time, like, I don't know, a project, right? So suddenly you're in a project, you're supposed to work with other people, but very rarely does the project manager say, okay, before we start this project, let's have everyone introduce themselves and explain to the other people in the group, how do we get access to your creativity the best in a group environment. And then I would say, for example, well, I'm an introvert. You should know I'm an introvert. If I look bored or annoyed, I'm not bored or annoyed with you. I'm actually listening. I just don't like being in the room here with all the other people. So I might not say so much, but I will come back later when I have a really good idea. You should know this about me. Don't get annoyed. Don't think I'm not interested. And so if everyone understands how everyone else don't put me under pressure. You need to give me time to, whatever it is. And then suddenly everyone has an understanding of the other people's creative processes. And now you will now behave differently. And it's surprising how seldom that happens. We just assume that everyone has the same creative process that we do, which of course Absolutely not true.
Yeah. And I've said it a few times on the podcast before, but like some leaders, they'll organize a meeting late in the afternoon and they'll bring everyone together and they'll pose them a problem and expect people to come up with really creative ideas. It's like, let's brainstorm for the next 10 minutes and come up with your best ideas. And you're like, well, creativity isn't a light switch. You switch on and off. So yeah, it's interesting.
No, I have asked over 1 million people, when do you have your best ideas? And by far, the 5 most common answers are in the bed or meditating, in the shower, on the toilet, on the plane, on the bus, in the car, when I'm exercising, when I'm in nature. None of that is brainstorming, right? People get good ideas when they're by themselves, not at work, not trying to be creative, not under pressure. And brainstorming is a lot of people at work, under time pressure, trying to come up with ideas. So there you go. But it doesn't mean that brainstorming doesn't work. It just works for about 20% of the population. And they are the ones who invented brainstorming, and then they force everyone else to do it. So that's a great example of how creative processes can be different. So you can still have a brainstorm, but you should never decide what is the best idea until a month later, when the people who do not work in the brainstorm has been to the toilet or the shower or wherever they've been. And then the idea pops into their heads and they go back and say, hey, remember that brainstorm? Here's an idea I had. So yeah. Processes, people are different, and creative processes are different. I interviewed. It's a long story I won't share, but I interviewed a Swiss watch designer once, and he had his best idea after a period of a few months where he had slept 15 hours a day, because basically he was burned out. He slept for 15 hours a day, and then when he woke up, he didn't work. He watched Star Trek the series for like 9 hours straight. And then he ate a little bit and went back to sleep. He did that for months. And that was his creative process. And the only thing he did was sleep and watch Star Trek. And then after doing that for months, he woke up and had this amazing idea for a watch, which was kind of like a 3D watch. And it's like built like the planet, inspired by Star Trek, clearly. And that watch later won the most innovative watch in the world for that year when it came out. So there you go. Doesn't mean we should do that, but that's worked for him. So whatever works for you.
I think that's a great title of this podcast, actually. How I slept, what Star Trek.
That is true. Whatever worked for you.
And Fredrik, you mentioned you do a lot of speaking. So yeah, over the years, you must have done various talks. Is there a favorite talk that you have, or a particular topic that you've explored? And could you tell us about that and why?
My topic has been for the last 25 years has been creativity. So that's my topic. And then of course there's different angles to it. Do I have a favorite speech? I don't have a favorite speech because I have very bad memories. I don't remember much of anything, but I live in the moment is my excuse. So I did a speech. That's why I remember the last speech. I was in Finland recently, and I did a speech, and I asked, because it was a small group, I said to them, actually the speech formula is wrong, because it's kind of like a journey. So it's kind of like a bus ride. You jump, I have the microphone, I'm the bus driver, and then normally the speaker will speak for 55 minutes and then there will be Q&A at the end. But that's like jumping onto a bus, and 55 minutes later, the bus driver turns around and says, where would you like to go? So it's stupid. So let's turn it around. Let's do questions first. So I asked them, what would you like to know about creativity? I said, I've studied it for 25 years, and I did a short introduction. And I said, what would you like me to speak about? And I gave them 3 minutes to come up at every table, give me one thing you want me to teach you. I got 7 things, and then I picked 3 of them. And I, on the spot, in 2 minutes, I created a PowerPoint based on those 4 things they wanted me to talk about. And I did it like a bespoke speech based on what they wanted to know, which became very successful. I mean, of course, they liked it because I spoke about what they actually came to listen, what they actually wanted me to speak about. And I realized that every speech technically should be done by this. Q&A should be done in the beginning to gauge what the audience is really there to learn. And if it's not what you prepared your speech for, you should change your speech.
Oh, what a novel way to do a talk. I love that. I've got a talk coming up, so I might steal some of your ideas on that.
Yeah, go ahead. And the audience is very forgiving because they know you put it together. It's kind of like a chef, right? Instead of having a menu, the chef comes out and says, what do you feel like tonight? Well, I feel like fish. We don't have fish on the menu, but let's see what I can do. doesn't matter if that fish isn't perfect. You're just going to appreciate it so much more because he listened to what you wanted to have, right?
Yeah. And you've written a book called
I've written 10 books,
Oh,
my
okay.
friend.
Yes. Well, your upcoming book. I'd love
Yes.
to know more about that and what's inspired you to write that.
Yeah. Well, the book is called The World of Creativity, and it's basically, yeah, it's 40 chapters, and every chapter is a country. So what did I learn about creativity in Mongolia? What did I learn about creativity in Thailand? It's not what can Thailand teach us about creativity. It's what did I learn about creativity by going to Thailand and interviewing a person in Thailand. In the case of the Thailand, for example, it's a Thai origami artist in Bangkok. What did you teach me about creativity? And that chapter is about that. Then there's a German beer maker, and there's an English car designer. There's a hostage negotiator. There's all kinds of people.
Wow.
And so the whole idea is to show the breadth of, like, we can learn. The underlying theme of the book is be curious about the world and realize that you can learn from anyone. That's kind of the underlying theme, because curiosity, the first chapter is called Curiosity, because curiosity is if creativity is the superpower, curiosity is the superpower for creativity.
Got it. So that's almost the precursor. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
When's the book coming out? Because I'm excited to read it now.
And I love that. Sorry, I just because he said, what is the definition of creativity? But you can also say, what is the definition of curiosity? And the funny thing is that curiosity, because I researched it, the word is different in different cultures. For example, in Swedish, it means like an urge for the new. That's the etymology of the ny. It's called nyfiken. And nyfiken means an urge for the new. But in, I think it's Bulgarian, it's called laputen or something, which means the love of asking questions, which is very different definitions of curiosity, but they're both correct. But when you see both of them, you realize that, oh yeah, it is true. It is the love of asking questions, but it's also an urge for the new. Both are correct. So that's the whole idea, that when you go globally and you look at different ways of approaching the same topic, you get a better understanding of the topic in itself. And then you have the English word curiosity. Do you know the etymology of curiosity?
I don't think I've really thought about it that deeply. Yeah.
Exactly. But so it comes from cura, which is the Latin word, and has the same root as the word care. So care and curious are connected, which makes a lot of sense. So that which you care about, you will be curious about. That's what you don't care about, you will not be curious about. That's why you are curious about curiosity. That's why we are talking about it. But maybe you're not interested in horses and you won't have a horse expert on your podcast, no matter how much they have, because you're not curious about it. And when you realize that which you care about, you will be curious about. If you want to be more curious, you figure out you should think about what you care about. My mother used to be a Montessori teacher. And the best way to explain Montessori for people who don't understand Montessori is that a normal teacher says, today we are going to learn about dinosaurs. But a Montessori teacher says to the child, what would you like to do today? And the child says, I would like to draw. And the teacher says, okay, great, let's draw a dinosaur. But if the student says, I would like to read, the teacher says, that's great, let's read a book about dinosaurs. The teacher still gets to teach dinosaurs, but not based on how she wants to, but not because she wants to talk about dinosaurs, but based on the kids' curiosity of that day. And of course, you're going to learn so much more if the kids want to draw. It's going to draw 10 paintings of dinosaurs because he wanted to draw. So when you use this approach on children or anyone, you realize that curiosity triggers creativity. Like creativity triggers everything else.
Oh, thank you so much, Fredrik. There's just like so many stories. I could go on for hours, honestly, but unfortunately we're fast approaching time, and I'd love to wrap up by giving you the opportunity to tell people, how can they get in touch with you? How can they follow the great work that you're doing?
I would say LinkedIn is the best. I'm not very active on the other platforms. I'm a little bit active on LinkedIn. I am active on LinkedIn. So yeah, Fredrik Haren or the Creativity Explorer, and connect there, or just thecreativityexplorer.com, fredrikharen.com. Sign up to the newsletter. Then every week I send out some insight about creativity.
Oh, love it. And when's a new book coming out? Because I'm really excited about
November.
it.
Yes, me too. It's coming in November. I sent the manuscript to the publisher actually yesterday. So there you go.
Wow. Oh, amazing. Well, I'm starting the journey of writing a book. So I might ping you a few emails to get some advice along the way.
Yeah. It's a great process. It's a great way to think, to write a book.
Got it. Well, you've written 10 of them. And so that just blows my mind. So amazing. Well done. Fredrik, really appreciate you taking the time today. Like I said, I think you take the award for the best office I've ever seen. And just been really such a pleasure getting to know you over these last 30 minutes or so.
Thank you so much. It's a great conversation.
It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favorite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. Simply visit the website www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again.